everybody, to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Sulman, here with my co-host, Osama. What's up, man?
Hey man, I'm good. I'm good. How are you and the adorable stuffed animals behind you?
Those are my daughters. Yeah, everyone's doing good. Today, we're going to talk about the state of the Warriors, man. It's been a rough season to start. It's been a rough couple of years, right, Osama? I mean, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on with the Warriors currently. They're sitting at just in the play-in spot, number 9 overall. Started the season a little bit hot, and then they've been on a kind of on a downward trajectory right now. So give me your thoughts on this season, and then let's jump into like kind of what brought us here.
Well, I think they're doing just a touch worse than you think. They're actually at 500. They're 19-19, and they're 11th in the West. They have the same record as Phoenix, so they're kind of play in, but outside looking in today. Here's the who's below them. The only teams that are ahead of are the Spurs, the Blazers, and the Jazz, and the Pelicans, who are decimated by injuries, and the rest are tanking teams, right? The issue this year is the offense. The offense, 17th in points per game, 23rd in shooting percentage, and dead last in free throw shooting. This is how bad teams go. They're not having a good season whatsoever. I think that's the shocking part. They're not as bound in rebounding as you might think. They're third in the league, 46 a game. But nonetheless, this is a team that does not play winning basketball.
They do not, man. They do not. I don't know what it is. It just seems like there's a lack of shooting behind Steph. Like, I don't feel like anyone can shoot like even Steph's had slumps, and then there's no one that can score the ball, right? Right? It's like Buddy Hield. Like some games he's hot, some games it's Buddy, right? You can't get a bucket out of that guy. Wiggins sometimes. Kuminga was doing okay before his injury, but he's kind of this ISO guy who can just take it to the rim, super athletic dude, but no shooting there. I think that's been their biggest struggle. Is like we've seen Warrior teams in the past have great shooting, have good depth, but they don't seem to have that, right? Do you agree with that?
It's low depth is the issue. Like there have been other incarnations of this Warriors team that have these like ancillary pieces like Kyle Anderson, your Otto Porters of the world, your Buddy Hields, your DeAnthony Meltons, but they had Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant or David Lee, and they had all-stars. All of them are all-stars that they even traded for, like a Bogut, like a David Lee, like an Andre Iguodala. Really, really great pieces, winning players. They don't have anyone like that. You get some of Wiggins, you got an aging Draymond, and the rest of the roster are bench players. All of them are bench players.
Yep, 100%, man. So how did we get to this point, Osama? Like, where do we start? Do we go back to the last title run? Should we go back there and see how did we get here? Right? Did they miss out on some guys? Did they just not draft great? I think there's some guys they could have traded for that they didn't do that. I don't know if you want to get into some, but I'll throw out one right now. One is Miles Turner, right? They could have had Miles Turner on this team right now, and that for years people say that guy should have been a Warrior. That guy should have been a Warrior, right? He's like the perfect Warrior. That's all we hear about him. So your thoughts on that, and then give me a few more names where they probably should have gone out and gotten some of those guys, and tell me why they didn't.
Well, I'll tell you, I think this started before that. This started to me after Klay Thompson tears his ACL. I get that they drafted some guys, fair enough, like Steph Curry broke his finger early. It was a lost season, the season after Kevin Durant left. That's fine. They trade D'Angelo Russell to get Wiggins. By the way, still made like a very aggressive trade. And look, Russell's not working. Let's get Wiggins. Fair enough. But after that, they get the 2 seed. They tank. They get the 2 seed in the lottery, and they decide to draft James Wiseman. That right there is the beginning of a number of decisions that did not work. It was a high lottery pick. I'm sure there was talent out there that they could have kind of dangled that number 2 pick and instead of keeping it. And what they did after drafting James Wiseman was trade away 5 second-round picks 2 years later to bring back Gary Payton II. That was the first mistake to me.
I agree with you. It's kind of where they start the 2 timeline business, right? That's where it's like, what were you guys doing? Like you got prime Steph. Why are you wasting his time with 2 timelines? I mean, nobody could have predicted James Wiseman was going to be this big colossal bust. But like you said, right, there could have been talent had for the number 2 pick, right? There were rumors about, oh, they could have had Giannis, they could have had someone like that, right? Like an all-star type of player, right? Where okay, maybe Giannis is not the guy they're getting, but they could have gotten someone a tier down from Giannis, right? So I agree with you. It starts with the 2 timelines, and then I think they make like a series of bad kind of decisions after that, where they're like, okay, then they get the number 8 pick here, right? And they take Kuminga, and they have the 14 pick, and they don't, instead of packaging those 2 kind of picks and getting a higher like draft spot and drafting like probably like a franchise, changing talent, they settle for 2 guys who aren't franchise changing talents. They draft Kuminga, they draft Moody, and Steve Kerr still doesn't give Moody minutes. It's been like 4 years, bro, and he still doesn't give him minutes. So I think that's another kind of draft where they could have changed their fortunes, and they decided not to do that as well, right? And they're still sticking to this kind of 2 timelines, and I think that's been the problem.
This is a front office that gets high in its own supply too much. They believe their own bullshit too much. If you look at the season where they drafted Wiseman, it didn't work. They're mediocre all year. Steph Curry goes nuclear in April. He averages like over 35 a game or something crazy. And then he's also at the same time playing with some sort of protective diaper because he has a hairline fracture somewhere down there. I'm going to pause, okay? And they get eliminated in the play-in. And then they still do that 2 timeline thing. And that was a question I had that whole offseason, everyone had, was what are they going to do with these 2 draft picks? Surely they'll improve the roster and put an all-star next to Steph. Klay Thompson was coming back off of back-to-back season-ending injuries before they even started. So that was tough. And they drafted, like you said, they drafted 2 guys, Kuminga and Moody. And to be honest with you, that title-winning season, complete surprise. I think that totally boosted their ego beyond belief, and we're like, we're so much smarter than everybody else. We figured all of this out. We're so smart. We're the best. Joey Light years. We're the absolute best. We're better at planning than anyone. Not we drafted like one of the best players of all time, and that's why we won. And he hit his apex and beat a Boston team that they had no business beating. But Steph is amazing, and that's why they won. And that's why I think it's enforced it. It's enabled this behavior of, we'll find another Moody and Kuminga. We're the greatest. We're the Spurs. We're the this and that. Well, that's not the case. They don't have anybody else on the team.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, even like, for example, I think when they take Kuminga, there are other guys that went after Kuminga that turned out to be better players, right? I think isn't Franz Wagner one of them, or he went somewhere around that same range. They could have taken that guy. He could have been a perfect Klay Thompson replacement. And I mean, and you take Moody and you don't play him. It's these frustrating things that they do in their rotations that make no sense. Are there any other like trade targets that you had wished the Warriors had gone after? I mentioned Miles Turner, but is there anyone in particular where you're like, there were rumors floating about this guy and you're like, damn, why didn't the Warriors pull that trigger? Why didn't the Warriors do this? Or at least give it a thought. Is there anyone like that for you?
Yeah. Just quick backtrack on drafting. LaMelo Ball was the James Wiseman draft, right? Tyrese Halliburton, who I think everyone whiffed on, but could have got him. And then Alperen Şengün, also a very Warriors basketball style friendly player. So they had some misses. But in terms of free agents, a couple that come to mind, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I thought was a great fit, great perimeter defender, winning player. Went to Denver, and what did they do? They won a title, right? Definitely a great player. I've liked the idea of DeAndre Ayton for a couple of years. He's been available for at least 2 years. And this has been a team that, I know they're just struggling with rebounding, but when they play teams like Cleveland that have big lineups, they get totally washed. This is not 2015 where you could play small ball and out. These are giants that can move. It's just not the same. Right now, the hot topic is Zach LaVine, who's shooting the lights out, and the math doesn't always have to math, in my opinion, right? It doesn't matter if you look on paper, he's an iso ball guy. He can shoot like hell. And sometimes that's all you need. You don't need another, like they say in hip hop, lyrical miracle. You don't need some lyricist. You just need a guy who could hoop is what you need.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, I think they've been rumored to Zach LaVine last year as well, right? They were like, oh, maybe the Warriors will trade for Zach LaVine. I think to your point, you just need a guy that can take some pressure off Steph, right? Like Kuminga is trending towards kind of being that guy, but he's not quite there yet, right? Like, and then he's a super ISO player, and if he doesn't get to the rim, Kuminga is done, right? Like you can stop Kuminga at the rim, he's like he can't shoot the ball. Like you can give Kuminga the Tony Allen treatment out on the perimeter, right? Like he can't shoot. So it's like you need a guy that can shoot. You need a guy that can take over the load from Steph. So Levine makes sense. Don't know how they get there, what they have to give up to do that. He's a big money contract guy. Probably have to give up someone like a Wiggins to get to him. Another name I'll throw out there. I think last year they were also in the mix for guys like an OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam. Definitely more rumor than interest, maybe, but. Like look at the packages they could have given up for those guys, right? Lauri Markkanen over the offseason.
Right.
Everyone was like, "Come on, do that." Like I don't know what Danny Ainge was asking for, but you give Danny Ainge what he's asking for, get this generational talent. You extend the window of opportunity here for Steph. So I do think there's definitely players they missed on in the past. Even when they draft Brendan Pozinski, like it's like. He looked good his rookie year, but when they made the pick, people were like, what did the Warriors see in this kid that they took him, top 20 over here? There was questions around that, right? When they initially picked him even. So I think it's exactly what you said, right? The Warriors scout someone and they're like, oh, we love this guy and we're smarter than the rest of the league. We're going to be good. We're smarter than the rest of the league. We don't have to make these trades. We're good. And so I guess how do the Warriors overcome that mentality? Like, is this the season they need to kind of overcome that? Like, oh crap, we're actually not as smart as we are, and we're gonna suck. What do you think?
They're supposed to figure it out over the offseason last year. I mean, I can understand losing to the Lakers in the second round a couple of years ago. They had just won a title. Should they have made the team better? Yeah, but they got bounced in the second round. It's not bad. They were competing, right? They went 6 games, and the Lakers had a lineup of agile guys that were problematic for that incarnation of the Warriors. That's cool. But last year they get bounced in the play-in, and Klay Thompson goes out shooting in the play-in. I forgot 1 for 10 or whatever that depressing number was. So where do they go from here? Is they got to get rid of these damn draft picks. That's what they got to do. Like how do you do right by Steph Curry? Is like they love their picks. Okay, you have your Vucevic's out there and your Cam Johnsons and Jimmy Butlers who don't even want to be there. Use them. 2029 is not relevant. No one is going to give a shit about the Warriors after Steph Curry leaves. These kinds of players don't just churn out of a draft factory every year. Like, who's the youngest player today that's a top 30 guy? Giannis, maybe? And he was drafted 10 years ago. This is an abnormal thing. Your franchise is as valuable as it is today because you drafted a legendary player. They have the right idea. We talked about these ancillary players, but you can't compete by piling up more of these guys with an aging superstar. Just get rid of the damn picks. What's the point of keeping these draft picks? Are you going to hit next year? How do you know you're going to hit next year? You have no idea.
Yeah,
and I sound like I'm whining a little bit. It's
true. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's so frustrating to see them kind of make this mistake year in and year out, where you're like, dude, you can't have a 2 timeline anymore. Like Steph's got maybe 2-3 years left in his prime, like, and maybe he plays another 4-5, like maybe he plays like 5 years total, but like at least another 2-3 where he's still kind of the number 1 dude. And if you can't find the guy to kind of help him and take over from him later, you're not finding that in the draft. Like, unless you get the number 1 pick and you're drafting Cooper Flag, right? Like, I don't know if that's not happening, right? Like, they're not thinking that hard, but it's like, how do you get there? And it's like you said, right? Trade those draft picks. So are there guys on your radar that you want them to trade for before the deadline this year? Is there someone in particular? I know you've been a big Jimmy Buckets guy. So is that a guy you want? Who do you want? Who do you want them to trade these draft picks for now?
Oh, I love Jimmy Butler. I'd love to have Jimmy Butler. I know that he's also an aging superstar, and he's difficult to trust given his health. He's also an enigma in the playoffs that can will you to the finals by playing like Michael Jordan in the playoffs, and being low-key as a secret, maybe his son, maybe not. But I want to take a quick step back. Did you see what Draymond said today? This is, what are we, January 13th, 2025?
I did not. No, I did not. What did Draymond say?
Draymond said something to the effect of bad teams tank and trade away and mortgage their future. We're not a bad team and we're not going to mortgage our future. And then Steph said earlier this year, you don't just start off 12-3 for nothing. So I wonder if they're, you know how you work for like a private company, you kind of toe the line a little bit and you kind of say things as a company man. Maybe you got like a earnings call coming up and you got to kind of be careful what you say to Wall Street. I don't know if they're just trying not to contaminate the value of the assets they're trying to get rid of, or if they're as drinking the same water as the Lakeups and our poor Stephen Curry and Draymond Green are as delusional as they sound right now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, Draymond is always a little bit delusional, right? He's drinking that Warrior Kool-Aid. He's always like, we're good, we're good, we're good. Like, Draymond always talks like that. I don't know why, but he does. I mean, I think he doesn't like. I mean, obviously, he's had some incidents where he's been kind of getting flack for that. Like, I think ever since he punched Jordan Poole, he started talking like this. Like, he's like, I can't say anything that goes against the Warriors. Like, that kind of like made him kind of get back to where, like, talk about good about the Warriors. So I think that Draymond, I think it was a little bit of grain of salt. I guarantee you, you can see Steph is visibly frustrated these days. Like what was that one game where Buddy Hield takes like a heat check shot and like he just like airballs it or something, and Steph's just like, what the like you can see it on Steph's face these days. It's bad. It's really bad. And I think I don't know what Mike Dunleavy's doing behind the scenes. It's hard to say, but I think they got to trade. They got to go for someone like you said, Jimmy Buckets, Zach LaVine. They got to get somebody. They got to do something to get Steph help.
Yeah, to go back to your question, I do like the idea of Nikola Vucevic, just a different Bulls guy who he's not an amazing defender or anything like that, but he'll get you rebounds. He can space the floor. He's playing next to Draymond Green, who's an awesome defender. He'll make him naturally better on defense, just sharing the floor together. There's no one on Chicago that comes close to what Draymond can do in terms of being a floor general, moving pieces around, talking, communicating on the court, calling out screens, boxing out, etc. So Vucevic, also a good one. Cam Johnson, I would say, is more like a lower level guy. Like you don't really give up that much for a guy like that. He's just a good player. But if you're going to quote unquote mortgage the future, I can see some hesitancy to go, let's go all out. If you get a good deal for a Cam Johnson, go for it. I think if you give away too much, that's you're just kind of caving in. That I do believe that you could be caving in a bit to get a Cam Johnson, where maybe in the off season you have an opportunity to get Jimmy Butler for free or something like that. I don't know if Pat Riley decides to play this. I'm the man here. It's 1997. I'm putting out a press release that we're not trading Jimmy Butler. I don't know. Who would like the Jared Allen also like pretty good trading. I don't know if Cleveland will do it now because of how well they're doing, but Jared Allen's not bad either. Audacious ones are like Giannis and Zion. Otherwise, I think that they're in a tough place. But yeah, I think Vucevic, LaVine, and Butler are the top three targets that do make the team significantly better.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Another guy that might make sense. I don't know if Toronto would do this like a Jakob Poeltl. Like he might make some sense. Like, but I don't know. Like these are guys, like the guys you mentioned. Those are guys you got to give away your future for, right? Butler, LaVine, not Vucevic as much. It sounds like he can be like the Bulls are kind of like you can have him for a little bit cheaper. So LaVine, Butler. But again, these guys cost money. You only have so many big money contracts. Like I think Wiggins and Green are like they're guys that are making the next like 2 and 3 after Steph. So after that, like how do you balance that? I don't know. But I do like the Vucevic one. I think that if you can put in a Vucevic, because that's what they're lacking is rebounding, some guy that can just play from the post, can find shooters. I think then you also got to go out a shooter after Vucevic, right? That's the other thing. Like, or you hope Buddy Hield can find his mojo again. Like he just looks horrendous some days, right? And it's just like, what is this guy? Like he's the ultimate heat check dude. And so I think that's where the Warriors are at, right? They gotta get a big that can help the interior, and then they gotta find another shooter, right? That's a little more consistent of a shooter, maybe another 3-and-D guy. And I think that's why they like DeAnthony Melton a lot, because that's what he was bringing to the table.
Yep, and he started off the year very well, and he did play well. He's a good defender, veteran player, spaces the floor, and he started off the year shooting hot. It is, it has to be, there has to be something jarring about Melton goes down and the team just like crumbles. Like the Melton, it should not be the reason why the team just immediately starts nosediving in terms of form because one guy who you signed for 15 mil a year can't play.
100%. Yeah, I mean, DeAnthony Melton should not be the guy that derailed this whole thing.
Right.
It should not be that case. How do you feel about the Dennis Schroeder trade? So far, we're what, about a month into that trade, give or take. Doesn't seem to be working out, right? Is that another mistake they made? They're like, oh, we got Dennis Schroeder for what was it, like just nothing basically. It was like free. Dennis Schroeder was free. I think they kind of talked themselves into we need a point guard behind Steph when that wasn't the case. What they needed was another player with Steph, not behind Steph, with Steph. And Dennis Schroeder can't play with Steph, is what it looks like.
Well, they're starting him, right? So like what is Steph is shooting guard? Like what's the two guard combo? This is I mean, I like the trade. He's a good backup point guard, but they're starting him. And they had Chris Paul last year who they started, and Chris Paul is an amazing point guard, and that didn't work. It just started off there's a funny like flow chart on Twitter that's like start off amazing, we're the best, and then it falls apart like 2 months into the season. This one is like we're 2 months into the season. Let's draft a point guard that's like that's a bench guy. It makes sense to have a ball handler. He can get to the line. He can score in bunches. I don't mind the trade. It's just that that's not what the team needs. I like the trade. And there's a lot of folks that didn't. I don't mind the trade, but it's not going to move the needle as much as you think. Like it doesn't make you better down the stretch in late game situations. Defensively, you don't get any better. So I don't mind the signing. It's just not the one they needed. They need more. Clearly, they need more. They're 19 and 19. They need more.
100%. Yeah, I think it's just weird to like they want to start Schroeder when it's clearly you need something interior or you need shooting. You need one of those. Schroeder's not the guy that does that. He's great off the like you said. He could be a great off the bench guy, sixth man type of dude. But yeah, he doesn't really move the needle. So I mean, like we kind of talked about it. We've been talking about guys they can get, what they can do, trade draft picks. If you're Mike Dunleavy, how are you thinking about these next 2-3 years? Like, what do you want the Warriors to do? Okay, let's say they missed the playoffs again this year. What are the next 2-3 years after that looking like? Because that's probably Steph's window right there, right? Maybe 2 years is what we're talking about. So how do you, if you're Mike Dunleavy, put on your Mike Dunleavy hat. Say what am I gonna do here in the next 2-3 years? What is your kind of like plan? Are you gonna, you don't have to go into specific names or anything like that, but what do you think is the plan? What is the game plan?
If I'm Mike Dunleavy, there are two different ways I can be Mike Dunleavy at this point, going into looking at from now to post Steph as an outlook, right? It's either, and this is us as fans thinking about their draft picks, it's who cares about what the team is like post Steph is kind of the sentiment, I think. And option one is to do right by Steph. Use up your picks by 2029, I don't know, 2031, whatever. You won't be able to draft very high. Whoop-de-doo. But you acquire all-star talent to, at the minimum, compete, which is fine. They'll make money. The franchise will be happy to be in the playoffs. Will be content with, look, I gave it a shot. But I would say if they manage to acquire some solid players down the end of that Steph Curry contract, maybe they can get some assets back. There was a team recently, it was Houston or Brooklyn, that was able to get some of their picks back that they had mortgaged away. So there's that. There's like doing right by Steph. The other is the other Mike Dunleavy, who's kind of the guy we're seeing right now. And they ride things the way they are until, or moderately close to now. They forget two timelines, okay? They'll be sitting on a recurring one timeline for a long time until they somehow hit on draft picks again. So it's those two things. You either do right by Steph or you continue to, believe your own bullshit, smell your own finger, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you're Mike Dunleavy, which approach are you taking? Which one are you doing?
If I'm Mike Dunleavy, I'm going and getting Vucevic, Levine, or Jimmy Butler.
Okay.
I don't really care. I don't care what happens to anybody else. I'm doing that. I'm doing that.
Do you trade Kuminga? Do you trade Kuminga for a player? Do you sign Kuminga to an extension?
Because of his age, if I can keep him because he doesn't really cost that much, I'm fine with giving up Wiggins and trading him. Any combination is fine. You don't lose 5 less games because you like traded either one of those guys. I mean, you have to look at it that way. What happens in the postseason? Oh no, we lost to the Mavericks because we didn't have Kuminga. That's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen. I mean, and it comes back to like you were hearing about those Utah Jazz rumors, right? Lauri Markkanen. They were apparently asking for Kuminga. They were asking for pods and some draft picks. Wouldn't you have done that? Like, if that guaranteed you Lauri Markkanen, wouldn't you have done that? Like, okay, maybe Danny Ainge is asking for 5 draft picks and those 2 players. Go ahead, just do it, right? Like, this is at the point where we've come to now, where we're like, damn, we should have probably just done that. I don't know. Would you have done? No, you still wouldn't have done that.
Pods is no. You cannot trade pods. You can't.
What?
No.
Pods?
I'm kidding.
You
I'm kidding.
can.
I'm kidding.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. I was like, damn, Osama, we're gonna have to get into something right now. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're at this point in the season where we're like, damn, pods and Kuminga and 5 first-round picks, just do it. Like, why not?
Yeah. There's still plenty of opportunity. I don't have in front of me like who's going to be a free agent next year, or wait it out to see who gets mad again and probably lose anyway because God forbid Moses Moody's not on the team anymore. So Melton's movable now. After the 15th, Melton's movable. That's 15 or so million. They can put something together and get somebody. It's more so a matter of do they have the balls to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Does Mike Dunleavy actually have the balls to pull the trigger? Is where we're at. All right, let's talk a little bit about, like you said, who cares about what it looks like after Steph? But let's talk about that. What do you see is going to happen to the Warriors? Let's say, Steph plays another 4 years. He retires sometime in 2029. He retires after that season. Warriors haven't won a title. They've signed Kuminga to the max deal. Draymond's retired. What do you think the Warriors are going to be after Steph, I guess is the question. You've kind of hinted at it, like, who cares? But because they're probably not going to be anything. But if they continue kind of how they're on this trajectory that they're on, let's say they don't trade for anyone, they don't really maximize Steph's last few years. What do you see for the Warriors, like after 2030 and beyond?
I would say it depends on what form the front office is at drafting players. Assuming they're of the same ilk of drafting players now and they're a bad team, they'll be hit or miss. Look at like San Antonio. Pretty good front office, that not pretty good at scouting and drafting guys that can play, that have talent. And they get to a point where it's like a no-brainer and you get a player like a Zion, like the Pelicans or Cleveland or any of these teams that post superstar era or just were bad for 76ers. That's where you are. Why would you be anything else? You lost an all-time great. Like what makes you think you deserve to be any better than that? Miami, like all these teams that had like a really good run are going to have like a 3 to 5 year stretch of poor or mediocrity. That's going to happen. There's no scenario where it doesn't, unless all of a sudden they draft someone like Pods, and he is amazing, and he's not actual Pods that we have now. Okay, maybe it is disrespect to Pods, but either way, like they just hit on the draft picks. But it's more likely that they're just bad for a long time, and the more often you get to pick in the top 6, top 5, the more likely you are at eventually accruing enough draft picks to be good again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Steph's gone. Kerr has to be gone. Like, Kerr's not built for, like, a rebuild.
Right.
He has to be gone. So you got to start over. Got to hope Mike Dunleavy actually knows what he's doing when he's drafting players. We don't know what's his track record just yet. So I think that's really it. I think, if we're in 2030, no titles for Steph and he's retired, I think the Warriors are not going to be a place where free agents really want to come. Because they were like, damn, look what they did to Steph. They didn't go out and help Steph win another ring or do like at least try it or anything. Like players notice these things, right? And then the Bay Area, again, super expensive place to live. Players want to go to like Texas and things like that where they get tax breaks. I don't think the Warriors have a chance to be competitive unless they draft well, and they'd have to get tons of picks. They're gonna have to like do an Oklahoma City type of rebuild where, hey, we traded for a guy, kind of like they traded for SGA. Turns out, man, that guy is a superstar. They made Thunder made a hard decision at that time to trade Paul George for SGA, and it worked out in their favor. So if the Warriors are gonna have to get a lot of draft picks and hope they hit on maybe even 10% of those picks, right? And that's what the Thunder did. They just took like 100 picks and they're like, hey, if we hit on like 5 of these guys, we're good. Yeah, so I think that's the plan for them.
Yeah. I think you can harbor a culture where You get guys that are like pretty good ballers, and you do like in Miami where you just trade for one really good player like Jimmy Butler because you have the cap space. I mean, that's not impossible either, where it doesn't matter if you're like a great destination or your reputation as an organization is cream of the crop or not. It's we have the cap space and we can just give Zion Williamson in his second extension $70 million a year, just for example. That's also in the card just because you can pay someone and he wants to live in California. 70 mil and high taxes be damned.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Osama, we're gonna wrap this up here, but where do you think the Warriors end this season? What do you think is happening with the Warriors at the end of this season? Where are they?
They're going to be in the play and they're not going to trade for anything.
I was afraid you were gonna say that, and the sad part is that's the scenario that seems the most believable for me. Is like they don't trade anyone. They're sitting at 9-10. They're in a play-in game. They're losing to the San Antonio Spurs in a play-in because they can't stop Wemby. And that's the season. They're like, oh, we'll figure it out again next summer. And like we're gonna have the same problems.
All this hopeful gasbaggery, and we don't believe any of it. It's gonna happen.
we don't believe any of it. If they trade for Vucevic, I will say I think they get maybe 7th, 8th seed. Like I think he makes that kind of difference where they jump up a seed or two. Just with this like fit with Steph and Green. Maybe we should ask Khaled the after his interview with the Zodiac GM whether Vucevic is a good synergy fit here for the Warriors. But I think that's really it, right? Like they got to make a trade. They don't make a trade. I can't see them being beyond 8 or like 9 in the play-in games.
If they do make the trade, you kind of like rewind the Bart Simpson gif and take the cake out of the trash, and it says at least you tried.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, at least they tried. Right? At least you can't blame them. And even but like again, they might still be sitting at the 8th seed, still in the play-in, even with the Vucevic trade, right? All right, cool, man. It was fun chopping it up about the Warriors. We don't believe any of it. We don't believe in Mike Dunleavy. We're not going to believe that Mike Dunleavy's going to do anything. But if you and me were Mike Dunleavy, maybe shit got done for the Warriors. There we go. All right, Osama, thank you for joining me, man. Have a good one.
Thank you. See you, man.